whatever day it is for you. So coming at you on location. I'm actually out of town doing a remote live, not in the normal shop, actually coming at from Corpus Christi, Texas. At any rate, time change is killing me. So I'm probably not going to do a full-on 2-hour blowout show this, but I did want to touch on this. I didn't want to let too much grass grow underneath our feet on this deal. Direct connection is coming back, and that is a huge deal for Mopar fans. One of the biggest things about direct connection is that back in the day, that was where Mopar guys went for their hot rod parts, for the tuning advice, for the just basic ambiance of the Mopar in general. That was what direct connection was. And it had a bit of a cult following that was really solid over years. And one of the things that bums me out is that with all this new interest in Mopar, with as successful as the Challenger and Charger have been, it just kind of stands to reason that direct connection would have to make a trip back. I mean, again, I've been saying this for how long now? Dodge has to come back with direct connection. They are marketing with all of the just fire and rock and roll music that you would expect when you're basically marketing in nostalgia. Well, what is more nostalgic than direct connection for the Mopar enthusiast, especially for the old guys? I mean, this has got to be a boon for them. At least you would hope that they would be happy for the Gen 3 guys, but you know, old school Mopar guy, I already know where you're going. So we'll just let that dog sleep. But the fact of the matter is that it's going to be a great opportunity for folks to be able to build their car within the confines of warranty exposure, which is one of the biggest issues that you get into, obviously, with the aftermarket. Tuning, parts, and things like that will end up killing your warranty. And of course, you know, Dodge is a major corporation, so if they have any reason to kill a warranty for a customer, they will absolutely do it. I've heard horror stories about it. So this is a great opportunity to get a hot rod part for your hot rod Mopar and still retain factory warranty. Well, that is provided that you've got a Hellcat. See, one of the things that I was noticing, at least in that initial release, is that there was a lot of talk about the Hellcat variants. You saw the Stage 1 and Stage 2 already advertised. Stage 1 being the tune only, Stage 2 being a tune and pulley for the Hellcat variants, with the Stage 3 in the works. You saw images that were basically showing you the torque converter and the drive shaft and the basically just demon parts, for lack of a better way of putting it, which would also, assuming that, you know, the trend continues, you'd see more suspension bits and things like that, mainly tailored towards drag racing. All of that, in essence, coming from the Demon program and the 1320 program, which is, yay, that's awesome. But the thing about it that really kind of tweaks it for me is the fact that when you start to look at that and you start to digest it a little bit, it really has more to do with the Hellcat guy than the NA guy. And the thing that I think is going to end up happening is this is going to be a very Hellcat-centric direct connection. They're really going to be playing towards those guys because, let's face it, the 392 is incredibly difficult to upgrade, at least from a dollar for advantage point of view. In other words, how much power does your hard-working dollar buy you? Well, it's not as much as other brands. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that 392 is already very elevated compared to the other brands' offerings. Basically, if the ceiling is this high and you start out really low, you can really make some gains and it looks like your money's well spent. But if the ceiling is, again, this high, either because of fuel quality, because of compression ratios, or whatever the case is, and you start out really high, there's not a whole lot of ceiling left to go. And I think that's really one of the reasons why you're not seeing the drive towards the NA crew. It's just, I think that they see the Hellcat platform, whether it's a regular Hellcat or a Red Eye or what have you, I think they see that as low-hanging fruit, quite frankly. It's easy to drag 30, 60, 100, 150 horsepower out of a Hellcat. Maybe not necessarily 150 on pump gas, but at least you can get to that 100 or 100 and quarter on pump gas. And what that allows you to do is it's just bam, bam, bam. It's easy peasy, really not a whole lot to it. The cars can be in and out of those power broker dealerships that they were talking about. And you get something on the street that is a significant upgrade over what you had. Whereas with the 392, look, let's be honest, you could bolt on an extra 150 horsepower, 125 horsepower to a Hellcat in about a fifth of the time that it takes you to bolt on an extra 50 or 60 horsepower to a 392. And at probably about the same cost. And that again starts to work in that Hellcat favor, which again, kind of makes sense with the direct connection and how they're playing this. However, you don't have to make more power to go quicker. And what I'm really hoping for the NA guys is that ZF 230 millimeter ring and pinion set, that they come out with like a 327 or a 331 gear. That's going to be really what would be the ultimate twist for the 392 guys. That would put them solidly in the 10-second range with just a few other tweaks like a tune and transmission tune, a re-gear, and some weight reduction on a drag pack. That car is now a 10-second car with that rear gear set with that setup. Especially, in 1320 weight, 1320 race weight prep. With no seat and a rear seat delete. So there is a lot of meat left on the bone, but there's not a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of engine power. So at any rate, I see where they're going. I'm hoping that they work the angles the way that they should. The 392 guys are really flying that Mopar flag super high, every bit as high as the Hellcat guys are. So let's just hope that it will trickle down to them. And don't forget, there were the scat packages for the 5.7, which I don't know how popular that really was, to be honest, because for the price, you could just shelve the 5.7 and the scat packages, get a 392 that would pretty much walk all over that scat package anyway. So really not dollar for dollar beneficial either there. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what all the offerings are. It's going to be a very cool opportunity, though, to see that nostalgia start to work in concert with the marketing and the look and the drive for these Gen 3 cars moving forward. So kudos to Dodge. Can't wait to see how that all plays out. Again, super excited about it. Something I've been begging and hoping for a very long time. So let me check in with you guys real quick, and then we'll get into some other things. Let's see. Mark Corleone is in. Good evening, Fresh Mace. Got the arm flex. I like it. Mark saying, just the man I was looking for. What's up, Mason? I'll ask my question after you get settled in. Very cool. Colby saying, sub, what's up, Colby? Goldberg's checking in, saying bedroom stream. No, coming at you from on the road. This is my hotel room out here in Corpus Christi, as a matter of fact. Donald saying, I think they were listening to you all going to offer parts to go faster to even old school 60s stuff. I'm hoping that they do. The old school 60s stuff, that's something that, those guys were really the driving force behind direct connection. And it wasn't the Hemi guy either. It was the 440 guy, the 340 guy, the 360 guy. It was the wedge guy, the 318 guy, the guys that were really out there just street machining it up. And that's really what direct connection was. And it came about in kind of a cool era back then. It was the street freak era, and, you'd have these crazy, just super radical cammed, tunnel rammed, and not really a pro street, but not really a drag car either. Just this, thing that existed to cruise and do long, smoky burnouts. That's the image. Those are the memories anyway that I have of direct connection and the guys that were really associated with it, sporting the shirts and the fender covers and all that other stuff. It was really kind of fun that, you would have that kind of interaction with those guys. So anyway, there's some cool history that comes along with that direct connection name. And I'm hoping that they can really weave some of that history and some of that, well, it's kind of a panache in a way, into the Gen 3. There's a certain air about direct connection that if you understand it, if you get it, if you're around cars and you're around guys that were really into cars from back then, there's just a certain air about that direct connection that you didn't ever really get from Chevy performance parts or Ford performance parts. And it never really mattered how much power the end result ended up being. It was just, it was direct connection, and it didn't really matter that, the race isn't the reason for doing this stuff. The whole reason for it was the sound, the look, the in your face out there persona that was Mopar back then, which was direct connection, which really, if Dodge does it right and they can kind of tie all that in and weave that into the, I don't know, the fiber and the fabric of that brotherhood of muscle thing they keep talking about. If they can weave that into the 25/8 thing that they're doing as well, that would be so cool, because there is a certain marketing direction that you can go with that would carry on for at least 3 or 5 years. And just think of the cool that would come from that, with wheels, tires, suspension, exhaust, blower kits, or at least blower upgrades, tunes, computer unlocks, all of these things being able to be done through your Dodge dealership. And then you get a warranty, or you are able to retain the warranty on it. AKA like, Mr. Norm style. You go to the dealership, you go, man, I really like that one over there. I want it in F8 green. They go, okay, well, would you like the cam package to go along with that? Cam package sounds pretty good. You got a rear diff? Absolutely, we've got a rear diff. And as a matter of fact, today and today only, you get that whole setup for 10% off. What do you say? We'll throw it in the cost of the car. Done deal. Finance the whole thing and let her rip. And you get your warranty. You get the sound. You get the look. You get everything. Man, tough to beat that. But again, it's going to take some very clever packaging, and it's going to take some, marketing, aside from, the fact that it's direct connection and it's out there now. But package it properly. Make the packages worthwhile. Make them make sense, and especially make them make sense to an enthusiast. The Mopar guys already know that they're not going to get very far with the 392 in terms of upgrades. I mean, cams are too expensive for what you get out of them. Yeah, you get more power, but at what cost? And everything that we've already talked about a million times before with exhaust and emissions compliance and all of that, but you don't need to worry about emissions compliance with a rear diff. It's as simple as a ring and pinion set. You just literally, so my buddy Robert Eden and I literally just swapped diffs in Revlon and Chandelier this past weekend. And well, I don't know, he did a lot of the work. I did a lot of the moving things around. But anyway, long story short, we recently did just swap in a new 309 rear diff into my car. And it's literally something that you could do as a dealership, as a dealer option. We can swap it out. He and I working together can swap that thing out in exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes. A dealership with a lift and a guy that does this basically pretty much all day long can probably knock it out realistically in about 1 hour and 15 minutes solo, if he's got all the tools and everything laid out ready to go. You want to talk about easy money. That is literally, like, if you were to poll 20 Challenger buyers, I can promise you that of those 20, probably 15 to 18 would take that rear gear setup just like that. So option it, and you're now a member of Direct Connection, which is super cool in and of itself. So whatever I could do to help that process along, I would definitely do it, because it's just such a major push in the right direction for Dodge if they bring the right parts to bear. And look, I get it for the Hellcat guys. The Hellcat guys have been screaming the loudest. We want better axles. We want to have access to the diff or the suspension or the converter, which ain't much difference. We want a factory available upgrade. And again, low hanging fruit, because Hellcat guys, A, got the money, B, it's a big jump in power for the money that you spend, C, you get it with a warranty, and it's emissions compliant. It's pretty much a no-brainer at that point. So are you going to be able to get the 309 gear and the red eye / demon drive shaft with the axles and get the kit and everything else to go at the dealership? Man, that would be a tough nut to deny, because now you're basically going to the dealers and you go, I want that Hellcat with these menu items, and I know for a fact that thing is going to run 970s on pump gas. Done and done. Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. It's about time that they did it too. So let me check in with you guys. Let's see. Let's see. Drell's saying, hope they offer that direct connection for the 392s and 57s. We'll see. That's what we're just kind of talking about, man. I don't know what they're going to do for the NA guys on that. Donald's saying, I think they're listening to you all. Going to offer parts to go faster to all, even old school 60s and 70s stuff, hopefully. Donald's saying, aren't they looking for leaders in the field like you, but Mopar only? Man, I hope so. They need to give me a call quick, too. Big Day saying, Sub B, now from Florida. Very cool. Miss Florida. I like Florida. Boots is saying, hello, B Mason. I ran a new best Sunday. DA was 550. Ran a 642 at a $1.13, 93 octane, and boostane. Very nice. That is moving. $1.13 and the 8th is screaming. That's a lot of mile an hour for a 642. Let's see. That's about 106. Running at 665s at 106 is what Chris was running. By the way, that's another fuel pump that bit the dust. So for you Hellcat owners, here's what I need you to do. I need you guys to start data logging fuel pressure. I need you guys to be taking a look at that, because just had 2 fuel pumps fail back to back. And it wasn't my car only. It was my car and Chris's car. So here's the deal. Orange Crush, I data logged Orange Crush Friday night. And Orange Crush had a descending fuel pump or fuel pressure that went from the initial hit to 79 all the way down to 62 or 64 PSI. So for you Hellcat owners out there, especially you guys that are still running the stock pump, the pump that came with the car initially from the factory, data log your fuel pressure, be looking for spikes in injector duty cycle. If you're seeing that pump descending in terms of being able to keep up with fuel pressure, remember your commanded fuel pressure is 79 PSI. If you see that pressure dropping, basically like a rock, then you're going to want to start thinking about swapping out that fuel pump. For you 2015 guys, a lot of those pumps were made in May of 2014. So just know that coming into the fold, your pumps are over 7 years old. And let's not be joking about it. You've been beating on this car since you got it. So these pumps are dead, or these fuel systems are deadhead fuel systems. So that puts those pumps under a lot of strain when they're at wide open throttle. And it's only a matter of time. I'd say probably for you guys that are, maybe new to the car but bought it used, it is probably a really good idea that you look and make sure that that fuel pressure is good. Just top tip to you, because from what I've seen, 2 out of the 3 cars that I data logged here within a week of each other, 2 of the 3 had pumps that were definitely on their way out. I don't necessarily think that it's a question of fuel quality or where are you getting your gas or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with the fact that you've got one fuel pump that's trying to feed 700, 750 horsepower, 800 horsepower in some cases. And it's just tough to do. And if you saw the video where I was showing, the pump and the little silly straw that is basically feeding the distribution port that goes to you'd know that pump is screaming to try to keep up with the demand of that engine. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And it's wintertime. The Moparmageddon is upon us. So just make sure that you're looking at that, especially during the wintertime, because this is when the cars are going to need, it has the highest fuel demand. Fuel quality is not 100% great. If you have a descending fuel curve or fuel pressure and you wind up spiking injector duty cycle, that could end up being a lean spike. Never a good thing, especially with a boosted car. Mark's asking, what size long tube should you run on your RT? Came across some extra funds. 1 7/8 is fine. 1 3/4 is good for a 5.7. That's definitely not going to hurt anything. I would probably argue if you're still running the stock cam, 1 3/4 would be plenty of header for that car. The main thing you have to worry about with long tubes, you got to remember long tubes, there's not really a designation to what designates or what is a long tube or what isn't. Most people just say, well, if the tube comes down into the chassis, then it's a long tube, but it's semantics, right? But long tubes for a 5.7, you're not really going to run into a flow issue with a 1 3/4. I think 1 3/4 might be a little on the soft side for a 392, but for a 5.7, it'd be plenty for that displacement. Arthur Wall saying no lift. Dodge says, yeah, they need to remove that clutch flow restrictor then. 1320J is saying, sub B, I run butane in my 1320 at stock. I can only get 91 octane, ethanol free. Question is, how much butane should I use to get around 93 octane? I've been using 3 to 4 ounces per full tank. Am I close? So to get around 93 octane, yeah, you're probably good. 3 to 4 ounces on a full tank. You got to remember, I was showing that chart. And, if you do an ounce per gallon, that's 100 octane. If you do half an ounce per gallon, I don't have the chart with me. I think if you did half an ounce per gallon, that'd be like 97, maybe 98-ish, somewhere in that range. So, I wouldn't try to, and again, you don't want to try to treat it like an exact science, but I would say that if you're putting for a full tank of fuel, if you're putting 3 to 4 ounces in a full tank of gas, I think you're going to be just fine. Maybe 5 at the most. 5 would put you at basically about 1/3 of an ounce per gallon, which, does it help? It helps a little bit. I think that if you're going to run butane, you probably would just kind of default to like half an ounce per gallon. So ish, that's your pivot number. So, take 4 ounces, throw it in there. It gives you 6, it gives you 6 full tanks out of a can of butane. So that's kind of how I would think about it. Just, okay, so a can of bustane's $32. It's, $4 to throw in the 4 ounces. And, it's easier. It's kind of an easier math trick to work with, in my opinion. So after doing all the testing that I did with it for a full tank, if you want to make sure your tank is good, 4 ounces, let that roll with how you're going to package that butane in your head with that, and it'll probably work out just fine. Big Dave saying his B cam gives fellow drivers a head turn, and what the fuck is that? Nice. Arthur saying, that's what I said. Dodge has to be listening to B Mason a little bit. Man, I hope so. I'll get a little bit of credit on that. At least give me a what is a happening. That'd be kind of cool. Kobe's asking, would a red-eye fuel pump help? Not really. I mean, I don't know that the red-eye fuel pump would be much of an upgrade. If you don't need the fuel, then the red-eye pump, it's not going to be working as hard, but then you got to go into injector pulse widths and things like your fuel injector or fuel pump pulse width. And it's just really not all that necessary. You got to remember, these fuel pumps, they're very robust. I mean, my pump is over 7 years old, and it's been feeding this car. And you got to remember how many passes I've got on little Miss Chandelier over here. All right, she's on the main stage lots. And I use that car and have been using that car for testing and a lot of high load situations. And it has been performing flawlessly. So I can't really complain with how that pump has performed. I mean, look at it like this. I've got 18,000 miles on that car. I bought it with right at 5,000 miles. So I've got 13,000 miles on that car. And the 13,000 miles that I have on that car have been driving to the drag strip, going down the drag strip, coming home from the drag strip, parts testing, high load, just read into that high load testing, and a couple of road trips. I mean, that pump that I have has done way better than it probably had any right to do. And, good job on that. The new pump, on the other hand, is a beast. That thing is not even running at full injector duty cycle, and it's capping at 80 psi. So the new pump ain't no joke. As a matter of fact, full duty cycle, when you're reading, it'll read 86%. I don't think it's gone over 82.1% for pulse width modulation, which is to say how much you're turning it up. Whenever you hear that, think of pulse width as a volume knob, and the higher you go, if 86 is the max, this thing is at 82, and it's over what the commanded fuel pump or fuel pressure is on that pump. So really good pump. Thing is a monster. Randy's checking in from Middle Tennessee. I like it. Eric saying, good evening, B, running a Cam 392 that I just hit 1,000 miles on the build and has been running great until recently. When I press the clutch in to go to a stop, it wants to die. That is going to definitely be something in your tune. Obviously, you'd want to check and make sure, number one, you got fuel pressure. But that is going to be more than likely an idle issue. Could also be, it will be fuel related for sure. What can happen also is check to make sure you don't have any carbon built up around your throttle body. The throttle body can kind of stick a little bit if you have any buildup on the back of that thing. So, oh, what the hell was that hand gesture? Anyway, if your throttle body goes to crack open, there can be this ring of carbon that builds up right in back of that. And so it can stick a little bit. I don't know what your idle is set to. I know that with most of the cammed car setups, the idle is brought up from 695 to like 720 or 780. If it's any lower than that, it will sound kind of cool, but it could actually cause it to die or surge at stoplights, basically. Let's see. Sambo saying, what's a good fuel pump for an 08 SRT8? Stock's the best pump you can get for it. If you're, not over 500-600 horsepower, you'll be good. Are you saying, is this a tuning problem or fuel? What should I check first? Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Check fueling, check something is in the tune for sure. But it could be check your plugs too. If you didn't swap plugs, make sure that you're not fouling plugs. Take a look at your idle and make sure that it's not overly rich at idle, which I doubt that it would be. But a lot of times when you start getting into the tune on cammed cars, just take a look at short-term fueling. Make sure that it's not yanking a ton of fuel, or that there's maybe an issue with fueling down low, which I highly doubt will be the case. More than likely, it's going to have more to do with just getting your idle set. Could be airflow also. If you've got a bigger throttle body, you may need to change throttle body airflow tables as well. Big Dave saying, if I wanted to sit at a stoplight and impress absolutely nobody, I'd buy a Camaro. Well, you better buy one soon if that is the case, Camaro fans, because Camaro will be going away here relatively soon. Let's see. Big Dave saying, yeah, I had to set his idle to 900. Yep. Rift is in. So for you guys that, may not have the full knowledge or understanding of what the direct connection thing is, it's think of it like Ford performance parts, or Ford racing performance parts, or Chevy had theirs for a while. It's the performance wing of the manufacturer. It's just back in the day, you could really put out some cool stuff. I actually have a vintage Ford performance catalog. It's from 1967, 1969, something like that. By the way, you'd be blown away by what the adjusted cost of parts was back then. It was crazy expensive. But it's pretty interesting because, back then they would give lash figures and just all kinds of different technical data because a lot of guys worked on their own cars back then because you could. I mean, you didn't have to go through all the headaches of, emissions and electronics tuning and all of that. I mean, it was just, a carburetor, a set of cylinder heads, pretty agricultural, really, for the level of sophistication of those cars back then. So the manufacturers would put out some hot rod tips and tricks, give you some parts that would work, and away you would go. Well, as emissions became more and more of an issue, and as people within the hobby started to move on to other things, direct connection and some of the other racing, I don't know how you would say it. It was like the support for the aftermarket, so to speak, from the manufacturer basically really started to go away a lot. And so, Dodge basically was practically out of it for all intents and purposes. And, Mopar performance parts, it didn't really, it was like a rebranding of direct connection, which it didn't need to be, but I think it was maybe a different philosophy. There was some push there for a while for the front wheel drive crowd, the 2.2 liter, 2.5 liter, but it was around that point in time, like in the mid 80s, late 80s, where, you can still get some hot rod parts, but there was a lot of uncertainty as far as what the general pulse of the community was going to be. Basically, is it going to beat to the drum of the old V8s? Are these new 4-cylinders and fuel injection and forced induction just going to literally push those out of the minds, especially of the new Mopar or the new performance enthusiast? Maybe. You start looking at it from that point of view, and realistically what you were seeing back then was a lot of uncertainty with 4-cam V6s and 4-cam 4-cylinders and turbos being strapped to everything. 2-valve V8 wasn't really looking like all that appetizing of a sit down when you had all these other newfangled things coming out. So, a little wonder why, a company or a division like Direct Connection would be a little bit confused as far as what it was going to be and what kind of type of image and what was its audience going to be. Well, obviously it went away, and here we are today talking about it coming back. Again, I cannot stress how excited I am about this, because this is really a cool opportunity for these newer Gen 3 owners, the guys that were nowhere near old enough to remember direct connection or what direct connection even meant. They may have family members that are old and remember that stuff, but it's kind of hard to explain. When you have something like direct connection that is catering specifically to the enthusiast, to the enthusiastic buyer, to the enthusiastic customer that is buying into more than just a conveyance, transportation appliance is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a mindset that is revolving in a lifestyle that is revolving around that car and around that brand. Well, it doesn't have to be the fastest. It doesn't have to be the anything est. It just has to be whatever that buyer envisions and wants. And when you have a manufacturer that's wanting to help you cater that and is to cater that car to you and is really catering to the wants and needs of the enthusiast, well, that's a huge deal. And we've kind of seen this coming, I guess. I mean, you start looking at Dodge and how they've been really supportive of the Fast and the Furious movies. And you've got Dodge as a huge sponsor of the Motor Trend On Demand. A lot of that is brought to you by Dodge. And the Mopar community, whether it's old school Mopar or new Mopar, the funny thing about us Mopar fans is that very brand loyal, even though there's no mixing of the oil and water that is old school and new school. I don't, and I never will understand why old school seems to have a disdain for new school stuff. But be that as it may, their kids are buying Mopars by the droves. I mean, if you haven't seen the latest sales figures, it is absolutely mind-numbing what Dodge has been able to do. I mean, you displaced Camaro completely. Camaro is now, regardless of what aftermarket support may or may not exist, Camaro is no longer even in the conversation. Mustang has been displaced by the Challenger. And that to me is a very odd, like I never thought those words would really ever come out of my mouth, but here we are, Challenger outselling the Mustang, and for a lot of good reasons. And none the least of which is the fact that guys and girls both like muscle cars. Guys and girls both like big, comfy, hot-rodded muscle cars, and they're fun to drive. And it doesn't matter that, a Mustang's faster if you listen. Nobody cares about that stuff. Faster doesn't win the race all the time. And in this case, these hot rod barges really do touch a lot of heartstrings, and it crosses cultural barriers. It crosses financial, economic barriers. That's really what Dodge does. And it does it in such a fun way that, well, the lack of direct connection was a pretty glaring misuse of marketing drive, and as far as I was concerned. So anyway, stoked that that's where we're looking at, stoked that that's where this is going. And, again, I can't wait to see where this goes. Fingers crossed that they come out with the rear diff option and all the different options for the 392 and for the 5.7 guys. Because you got to remember, bad boy will bolt into either car, and a 331 and a 5.7 would be a riot. You sneak up on an unsuspecting Mustang on the street. If you got drag radials on the back of that 5.7, that Mustang will be seeing you get very small before he has any chance to reel you in. Hey, Eric, thank you very much. Saying thank you, B. Mason, for all the great content. Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that, buddy. Very cool. Appreciate the contribution to the cause. Let's see. Oop. I just blew right past that. Hang on. Sorry about that. Albert saying, hey, B just picked up an 0357 1500 with 58K on the odometer. That's low mileage, obviously, for an 03. What mod should I start with? Taking care of brakes and plugs currently. Any other maintenance items that are a must? Just don't get too crazy with that thing. The early Gen 3 Hemis had a nasty habit of dropping valve seats if you hit them with nitrous or they overheated. So obviously a tune and get at least a 180 thermostat in that thing, if not a 170. Would be the first go-to is cooling mods for that thing. Keep those cylinder heads cooler. Eric saying, thanks, Big Day. Oh, and yes, I am set at 900 right now. It's odd how it just recently started. I'll double check my tune, plugs, throttle body, and fuel intake. Yeah, check all that stuff out. Make sure everything's still up to snuff. And just make sure you're data logging. You might find something in there that we're just not touching on that is causing an issue. Could be a sensor. Could be a lot of different things. So just check that out. Could be a vacuum leak. That's the other thing. So check that out as well. Big Dave saying, hey, you rock. Much love, bro. Thank you, Big Dave. Appreciate that. Right back at you. Let's see. Oh, Albert's saying he's thinking about throwing a can tune on it. Already have a Diablo tuner from years back. With buying a license, if it's all stock, yeah, I mean, the can tunes are okay. They're not all that great. You've got to really monitor short-term knock retard with those things. Muhammad saying, wasn't sure if he was into the trucks. Have you not seen videos on truck? Have you not seen my old truck on the dyno? What's a good low-end cam for a 2012 Ram? So you've got really a couple of cams you can look at. I like something that's going to check in for the truck. See, it depends on what you're going to be up to with the truck. Something like a 218 on the intake side, 224 on the exhaust side, intake center line of about 107. Lift, it doesn't really matter if it pick a number 580. And obviously good springs, good push rods. Um, LSA of about 113, 112 on that. That's going to be a pretty choppy little cam, but it's going to run good. But you are going to hit well, it's a 2012, so it's still going to be that is the later intake, which is variable runner. So that would be a fun little cam in that truck. You could go a little bit bigger than that. Go with my sniper cam, aka CDO1. There's a few that are like 223, 224. It can get a little bit big, but it could still run pretty good in that truck. On the intake side, 228, 230-ish on the exhaust side. Those are good cams too. If you're using the truck for a lot of street driving and towing or anything like that, doing actual truck stuff, I would suggest going with a slightly wider lobe separation, though. Not necessarily a drag race cam. A lot of that can get old after a while. Something around 114 in the trucks is pretty good. Keeps it a little bit smoother, and you'll still pick up power practically everywhere. On a 114, I'd rock intake center line to like a 109. That's a pretty cool little cam, and like I say, it would run great in that truck, especially with that intake. Rift is asking, do you feel like this new factory tune that Dodge is putting out was just them trying to control more of what you can do? No, not at all. I mean, you can still go in and unlock the computer and put whatever tune you want, make whatever changes you want. Just do a read file, license it, and I mean, you're pretty much good to go at that point. So, I would say that if anything, it's just them trying to give you a little bit more and be able to warrant it as well. And that's really more the point. I mean, it's keeping this thing within a warranty envelope while all the same time keeping it emissions friendly. That's one of the main reasons why I never did take cats off of the Hellcat. This power level, it didn't make any sense to. And to be honest with you, I mean, we're running 970s, 980s with the factory cats on the car. And I mean, it's mean, lean, and green. I mean, what more can you ask for, right? So, I would say that it's what you have to do to these cars nowadays to make them warrantable. We got to keep something in mind, guys. Look, I think a lot of times when we're talking about getting more power out of these things, and when we're talking about working with 93 octane, we're forgetting a key component to this whole conversation, and that is the fact that once you tune these things, just talking about a regular Hellcat engine, when you tune one, you're literally going from 700 horsepower to 750, like that, okay? Part of it is shift points, you're stretching the thing out a little bit more, but the reality is that you're still dealing with the same metallurgy that used to make cars run around with 200 or 180 horsepower. Number two, you're relying on a gasoline that was a premium gasoline back when premium gasoline was good for 150 horsepower. Now you're doubling the power. Think about that for a minute. You're doubling the power. You're not changing really anything in the metallurgy. Sure, there might be some webbing or whatever, but the metallurgy hasn't changed. The gasoline hasn't changed. So all of that knock sensitivity that you're working against, none of that has changed, but yet you're wanting to get literally double the power out of it, both in horsepower and in torque. So it's not just holding the thing together in terms of just a sheer power number, or I'm sorry, it's not just holding the thing together in terms of, keeping it emissions friendly. It's staying emissions friendly, all the while doubling the power output. Oh, and by the way, also getting double the fuel economy. So lots of doubles going on here, but a lot of it just has to do with the fuel quality, unfortunately. And we've been running into that here lately with the testing that you guys have seen me do. And, I coming back from putting the rear diff in Chandelier, and I had to stop off at Buc-ee's and get gas, and figured I would data log Buc-ee gas. Why not? I'm so used to getting gas at one place. Let's data log the fuel from somewhere else. And sure enough, wasn't exactly up to par. At least it wasn't exactly up to boost car in boost weather par. And so, which admittedly is asking a lot, but I mean, you would hope that it is going to be consistent across the board. And So tried the Boostane out, then filled it up with, fuel from a very well known source, and it worked out great. So, um, just goes to show not only is fuel quality one of the most important things that you can, that can affect how your car runs in general, but it's something that is when you get to this power level, it's literally on that edge. And obviously my tune is got provisions in there to deal with that situation where you're going to have kind of crappy fuel quality, but you don't want to have to deal with that. And again, that's how hot. I mean, you got to remember, I'm not really adding any timing to this tune. And even with stock timing values, it's a little jinky. And with the added fuel that I'm throwing at it too, by the way, it's a little bit jinky as to whether or not it's going to be cool with the fuel quality that we've got right now. So, and again, with all of that, basically nothing done to the tune and still having questionable fuel quality issues, that's a real concern. That's a real thing that you got to look at. So, it really has more to do with fuel quality and what you can get out of, the same metallurgy that you've been dealing with for so long, and, the same fuel that you've been dealing, well, actually not quite as good a fuel as you've been dealing with as well. Muhammad saying he bought a 2012 at 89K, had a swap dash, was 99. Rich saying Roadkill also sponsored by Dodge. That is your Motor Trend on Demand, the MTOD. That is the umbrella that encompasses Roadkill, Hot Rod Garage, and everything else, and then everything else underneath that. Don't get me started on that. Ready saying, changing ends here, my 17-inch SR 392 with a safe, mild tune and a Barton shifter. Any recommendations for suspension upgrades? Diff braces, I still have my direct connection how-to manuals. Love those, by the way. So one of the things that I would look at with that is I like the BMR lower trailing arms. We ran that on the Demon. I'm not currently running any suspension mods right now with my car, but if you want a little bit more control over ride height and the look and just the feel of the suspension setup, there are some coilovers that you can look at. I haven't messed with any of them personally. I just haven't really had a need to, but I do know of guys that have, and they swear by them. So I think that, it's pretty much a, it's just, do you want to spend the money on it? And, I've been known to spend a lot of money on suspension parts. I just really haven't in this car's case, and will probably won't. But there are coilover kits available that are out there. Diff brace for sure. The performance diff brace is good. Top tip on that though, for your cradle bolts, don't go in there and crank those things. Don't put a whole lot of wrist on them. Just snug them up just a little bit, and make sure you use blue Loctite on those. But it's just there to basically hold the tongue of that brace in place. It's not, you don't want to just grind it up in there, because then it'll actually kind of lift the front of the diff a little bit, and it can actually cause it to bind slightly. Yeah, Eric, thank you again, buddy. Riff saying, I definitely would say a diff brace helps with a 6-speed for sure. Anything will help with a 6-speed. Randy's saying, just seen a video of Shaq talking about his son wanting a Tesla. He told him he better put that thinking away and go buy a charger. That's awesome. Randy's saying, thanks. Any brand you would recommend? Not really. Man, they're all good. I hate to say it like that, but at this stage of the game, I don't know of too many bad ones that are on the market. I would say fit one that fits your budget and your needs. When you're working with suspension bits, though, spend the money. Don't try to go cheap. BMR, you can get away with some parts. It's just naturally not that expensive to make a lower trailing arm. But when it comes to what you're wanting to work with, spend the money, because you're going to be looking at higher end bearings. You're going to be looking at more consistent spring rates. That's really what you're buying when you spend that money. Riff, thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Saying his Hellcat with a 2.6 upper on ethanol still has the cats. At what point do you think I should take them off, even if I should? I think you're at that limit right now, man. I mean, you got to figure that, you know, look, the Demon was running race gas with factory catalytic converters at 840 horsepower. So they're at least not going to get chewed up with that. As long as you're running enough of an air fuel ratio that you're not baking the cats, I think you'll be fine. And, you know, I just don't see you really running into too much of an issue. I would say that you will probably, though, start to see the cats more of a flow restriction at about it depends on the dyno that you're working with. But I mean, once you start running 950s, 960s, that's probably getting into that questionable area. I know 970s is perfectly safe. 960s is probably pushing it. 950s, 940s. Maybe start wondering about it then. Any faster than that, I'd probably pull them just because you don't want to destroy a set of catalytic converters. Not saying that you would, though, because they're turning out to be really freaking robust, as a matter of fact. Let's see. Bear with me here. Ray's saying, thanks, any brand that you, okay. And Dr. Diff saying, can't go wrong with a Joker in a truck. Yeah, that falls into that 220, 222-ish intake duration. It does work well in trucks. It just depends on how much of a lope, how much of a chop you're looking for. A lot of times with trucks, guys don't really want that. They're looking for something that's going to be a little bit smoother, especially if they're towing or dailying the truck. Now, if it's a standalone vehicle, yeah, I'd throw something a little bit more aggressive in there. 510 is asking, hey, B, got the arm flex, I like it, saying, would you know if the 392 crate engine ECU will have extra pins so I can wire in a fuel PSI and wideband gauge for data logging? No, I don't think that it will, but you won't need it because if you've got the ECU and you've got the software like HP Tuner software, you can monitor all that. So you'll have a fuel pressure sensor on the fuel rail, and running a wideband, that's actually on your you're going to not be running a cable, you'll be running MPVI2. You can wire in the wideband into your MPVI2 to read the external devices. Clay saying he's actually in the mood for an 89 Dodge Ram D350 dually with the Cummins. Those are cool trucks. They're cool trucks and they're getting real expensive too. Clay's asking, what's your overall opinion of the Dodge? They're good. The only difference, or the only thing that would spook me a little bit is, depending on how well the truck was maintained, sometimes the turbos can end up getting eaten up on those trucks. I've seen where the turbos have failed on some of those trucks, but it's really more of a bearing issue than anything else. Just keep the oil change and you should be in good shape. Red Dog's asking, any benefit to adding butane to E85? None whatsoever. In fact, I would never add butane to E85. In fact, I don't even know that it would. So if you look at that chart, go back and watch that video, and you see that chart where it starts off like it just goes like this. I don't know what the octane of butane is, but I can tell you that you're going to run into like an infinity at some point with that chart. No, you're not going to get better than the E85. BB78 saying, hey, Professor, Stealership saying my 2010 Challenger needs new lower control arms. Should I stick with stock or would Challenger Hellcat arms work or be better? There's no difference there. What's probably gone on there is that your bushings, the rubber bushings have started to wear out or they've collapsed. Just throw a set of BMRs on there. I've got a how-to video on the BMRs. It'll take you less time to get the car like set up and ready and get the tools together than it will be to swap those things out. I mean, literally, I think I was in and out and done, even with getting tools and filming in less than 45 minutes. There's really nothing to it. And Dr. Div saying that, he is just seconding what I had said. So he actually had bad luck with adding anything to E85. Yeah, it's the what you're adding to the E85 has a lower octane, I think, than the actual E85 does, especially canned E85. Sean's asking me about rip coils. They not even worth your time to fool with it. Oh, Clay saying he likes the early 91, 81, 93. Those are nice. Oh yeah, Doc's saying he's tried the MSD and other ones. Yeah, just stick with stock. You're good. Talking about the coils. Sean's saying thanks for the advice. You got it. Riff's talking about performance development. That's PER and then the number 4 Mance development is who makes those. Oh, and then Clay saying he likes the old school Dodges. Yeah, the old school Dodge trucks are good looking, man. But again, they're getting hard to find. The thing with Dodge, here's the problem with Dodge trucks, is that they were fleet trucks back in the day. Government had a lot of them, and the problem with the Dodge back then is that they were easily one of the best looking trucks on the road. But the problem is that everything, the cab, the bed, it just deteriorated around a really good engine and a really good transmission. Like you could conceivably be driving around the floor of the cab, a steering wheel, a gas pedal, a brake pedal, and the frame and an engine and a transmission. And that would be all that would be left of those trucks. I mean, it was really bad how bad those things rusted. So when I was looking for trucks, before I bought Sierra, I was dead set on finding a Dodge of some kind. And the more I looked, the harder they were to find. As a matter of fact, I would find 20 old, like 74 Ford pickup. I would find 20 72 pick a GMC or Chevrolet for every one boxy Dodge that I would find. And if I did find a boxy Dodge, it usually looked like it had been dredged out of a lake. And if it didn't, then they wanted an arm and a leg for them. The other downside to those trucks is aftermarket support ain't what you think it is for those trucks. And that was the other issue that I was running into was, to lower it was going to take, the van lower control arms and just a lot of just kind of hokey, just that they don't just, you can't just get the right stuff for it. Anyway, there lots of funky stuff going on with Dodges. Another weird thing about the Dodges is that they, from what I could gather, had 2 different cross members. And so a lot of 6-cylinder Dodge trucks. And keep in mind, I learned how to drift from my granddad in a 6-cylinder long wheelbase Dodge truck. So 84 Dodge truck. So I get it. Okay. Lots of 6-cylinders, but there's some differences in K-member. It's just, the transmissions, not K-member, transmission, the rear end. It's not like Dodge, or not like Ford or Chevy where you had higher end, well, let me say, for the engine, a more robust transmission with the rear end to go along with it. It just, had a weaker engine. It wasn't like that with Dodge. You had a lower tier transmission, lower tier rear end. And you start to look at it and you go, damn, by the time I'm done fooling with this thing, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. And so hard to find bodies that seem to disintegrate when they get wet. And, if you did get a 6-cylinder truck, you'd have to basically reinvent the wheel to get it where you wanted it to be. Just a lot of stuff like that ended up turning me off to trying to find a Dodge truck, especially considering the deal that I got on Sierra ended up working out really well. Clay checking in Bladenboro, North Carolina. Very cool. Oh, Rich saying that he was running BMRs, but at first just did the BC coilovers. Nice. Donald saying 93, good model for that truck. Clay saying he's looking for one with a short bed. Yeah, those are really hard to come by. And again, they were really hard to come by just because I can't find them anymore. Or I was having personally, my experience, I was having a hell of a time finding a clean one. Clay saying 72 to 93 is the last of the old school, and with a 440 they rock. They are pretty killer with a 440. That's actually what I was going to do with mine. It was just going to be a big block truck. It was going to be a just be a 440, super simple, 236, 242 cam, nothing major, just something that sounded good that would do burnouts for distance. And that was going to be my Dodge truck. You know, just a 800 Edelbrock, pick an intake, wouldn't matter. That was going to be it. And ended up not making that happen. It was just too hard to find the truck. Randy saying he loves his 87 100 with a 318 two barrel, knocking on 300K. That's the thing about it, man. They will last forever if you take care of them. Even has the original Ram hood ornament. Hard to find. And that was the other thing. I really wanted one with the Ram because that's what I grew up with, the truck having the Ram. So I'm not saying I'm not a player anymore on those trucks. It's just, damn, if I could, it would take the right one for me to get in bed with one of those trucks at this point. But with that, guys, I'm going to check out, going a little over an hour tonight. This time change has got me all jacked up. Plus, I got to wake up crazy early in the morning. So with that, I want to thank each and every one of you guys. Appreciate y'all that had contributed to the cause. So stuff we've done to Little Miss Chandelier at this point, fuel pump, and the new rear diff. So that diff will be going up for sale, just doing a refresh. That's basically it. Nothing wrong with it, but she's got a lot of passes on it, so it was time. So that's the latest with that thing. And like I say, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you're going to sit it, don't bend it, keep your shiny side up. Love each and every one of you guys. Would not do this without you. And we will catch y'all on the next one. Adios.